Hey everyone, good day, good day. This is the K and K, raw and real, because we don't use AI and we just do it off the cuff. We're not cutting anything. It's just you get the real stuff because that's what we are. We're authentically real.
We are authentically real. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
cutting
no
AI out. No offense, AI.
offense, AI. So
Oh, and
let's
what we
start.
do, just in case someone's first catching
Oh,
this
right.
and
Yep.
hasn't been watching us, what Christy and I are doing, it's Christy and Kathy. Kathy.
I'm Christy.
And what we're doing is we have a book that we've been through before in life called The Course in Miracles. And so there's a section called Manual for Teachers, and we've been going over it. So we started recording some of them. And because we get such insight and we feel like it was such a good value for ourselves that we wanted to share it with whoever gets this message.
Yes. I'm just sending a quick message.
And so I'll just read the title. So
Okay.
we're on 9, and if anybody wants to know, October 5th, 2024 is when this is being recorded. So that might give reference to a time if you listen to it in years to come. Are changes required? Are changes required in the life situation of God's teachers? Well, right there, I'm going to say if you're not changing, you're not growing. If you're not growing, you're dying.
That's right. Um, changes are, excuse me, changes are required in the minds of God's teachers. And minds is italicized. This may or may not involve changes in the external situation. Remember that no one is where he is by accident, and chance plays no part in God's plan.
That means everything is meant for a reason. And if you can look at the reason, then that might help you.
It is most unlikely that changes in attitudes, it, what the heck? It is most unlikely that changes in attitudes would not be the first step in the newly made teacher of God's training. Excuse
So
me.
it's not that we would change our attitudes first.
Is that what it's saying?
I'm thinking it says it is most unlikely that changes in attitude. So it's probably in thoughts.
Let's find out.
Yeah.
There is, however, no set pattern since training is always highly individualized. There are those who are called upon to change their life situation almost immediately, but these are generally special cases. By
Okay.
far,
I want to stop right there. Just like, so what really altered me is I grew up in a very humble, good setting with a family. And then in a 3-year period, I went through marrying an elite, having country clubs and beach houses and stuff. But I was getting the shit beat out of me. My dad died suddenly of a heart attack on the golf course. My brother was diagnosed with cancer and he had 2 kids. We moved 5 times in that 3 years, and I went back to school and got a postgraduate paralegal certificate. When I say that I did all that in a 3-year period, there was a couple more. There was a couple more deaths added in there. My aunt died. I got out within that 3-year period. I got divorced. It was over 33 years ago. There was no internet. I had to figure the shit out myself. There was no support, zero support, because when I told people that he hit me, they asked me why. And then, and I'm not, this is all a story, but I'm just saying when you think you're going through shit, everybody has gone through shit. Some people grew up with it and
Mhm.
horrible situations. And, but I'm telling this because, and then when I got out of it, I started dating a magnificent man, and he was within 3 months killed by a drunk driver. So, and there were so many moves and different friends and jobs and everything during that as well, which seems like a lot when I just say what I went through.
We pause it a second.
Mhm. Go back. Okay, so we took a moment there, um, deal with some
Personal
things.
thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And so what I was saying is that shift required, I mean, that was a huge shift, one after another. And I have to say, my faith in something above, something more than I. So, whatever that is for you, that is what was my saving grace through all of it. And people would be put into my life that were just such a blessing. And it was sometimes hard for me to receive them because it was so traumatic. And I was trying to just keep my fucking shit together. Sorry. But, so when it says that some life situations are almost immediately, it's because you, you just have sometimes a freaking choice. You just are, I'm changing.
Right, right,
I'm
right.
adjusting to
Exactly.
this new situation repeatedly. And some, it's going to take a long time or it takes longer.
Yeah, it's a longer process. And
Mhm.
I don't know if it'll tell us what that process is.
Let's
But
continue.
I would agree that, like, for me, it was growing up, and that there was just, it was a left and a right and a left and a right, just shit happening between an abusive dad and a just layers. And so there was always people in my life though that gave me hope, who saw the real me and who helped. And so that's what created um resiliency for me, and that there was just always hope. And the thing is that what I thought was, and I believe that that's a God. And when I say God, I mean, I'm very liberal with God, and everybody gets to decide and define that for themselves. We're not here to be religious or represent any kind of denomination. It's whatever power you believe in. And if you don't, that's fine. This probably is not for you then, and that's okay. Um, so I believe that God put people in my life. And then the solution, though, I thought was that if I left and got a college degree, my life would get better. Like, knowledge is power. But really, if you don't know how to use that knowledge, um, all it is me chasing the carrot, so to speak, and chasing something in order to make the inside feel better. And I didn't know that the inside needed to change in order for the outside to really reflect. I mean, I could attain things, and I have. I have attained lots of jobs and moved up. However, if I didn't feel worthy of it and that I deserved it. So therefore, there's been a little bit of self-sabotage, and um, that has changed with me getting more spiritually fit, is what I say, and having faith and healing, because I believe that I'm worth healing. I believe that I am worth healing for.
I love the spiritual fit um, because we work on our bodies to get them fit. Well, some, and you hear about, eating healthy and all that, but it's really feeding that. I think that's what's missing is um, whatever you believe in, having a belief in, I hate the word belief, that has lie in the
Yeah.
middle. Having
Yes.
faith in something outside of ourselves, the fact that there's wind and the sun comes up and the plants grow and die and come back, is evidence enough of the fact that the river flows one direction and doesn't change for the most
Right.
part. I think that there is a river that changes flow
Yeah,
or
it's in Minnesota. It goes north a minute. Yeah.
yeah, because that's why I was saying that. And so that's evidence enough. But I did want to say before we move on, um, I see you. And whoever's watching this, I see you. So that part of you that needs to be seen, there's somebody that sees you. And if not, just know that I see you.
And I see you. This is one of our purposes
Mhm.
of creating this.
And you
Is
are worthy.
you are worthy. You are absolutely worthy.
And that took us a while to break through. Christy and I had a little fun session on helping each other feel worthy. We should do that next time.
Yes, it absolutely helps, and that's how you start the shift. Anyway, let's go on and see what it
Okay.
says here.
Yeah,
Do you remember
please.
which number we were at?
Seven. You're starting on seven.
By far, the majority are given a slowly evolving training program. I love that it's called a training program.
I do
It
too.
makes you just feel like you don't have to be perfect, because you're training. And so if you're training, you're not gonna automatically know something because you're training for it, right? Like,
I'm
you
gonna
don't
call
start.
my yeah.
Yeah, you don't sort of workout program of learning how to run a marathon immediately. Like, oh, I think I'm going to run a marathon today. I mean, that's I don't know that there's anybody who can do that. Maybe there is, but really you start training for it. It's a program so you can learn how to be a marathon runner. And so this is exactly the same thing, but it's getting us spiritually fit.
It
This
is.
is a spiritual fitness program.
We've already bought the shoes and we started walking.
Heck yes, we did. Heck yes, we did. Okay, so in which as many previous mistakes as possible are corrected. Ooh, so I'm going to read that whole sentence again since I stopped. By far, the majority are given a slowly evolving training program.
No, wait a
In,
minute. The majority. So
yeah,
if you're on a slow path, don't like beat yourself up. The majority are given that slow evolving
yeah,
training program. Okay, keep going.
yeah. So in which as many previous mistakes as possible are corrected.
Oh, so you get to make a lot of mistakes and then you get to correct them.
Well, but I don't think we know we're making mistakes. So like I
No.
don't think anybody realizes like the mistakes I've made in my life, very few were consciously made. And then it's like, well, what are the mistakes? That's where my question is going next. Where and what mistakes? Because are they mistakes? I don't know.
Nothing's probably a mistake. I think it's going to tell us nothing's a mistake, but let's read.
Let's find out. Relationships in particularly must be properly perceived and all dark cornerstones of unforgiveness removed. Ooh,
Ooh. So there's that word forgiveness, which I do talk about in my book, and everybody talks about. Now, forgiveness is for us. And so
right.
when I've had people say, well, I just can't forgive them for this. I I had someone beat me, so did you. And you work through the forgiveness because you see that there was something in them. Hurt people hurt people. I say that all the time. Hurt people hurt people. And so whatever someone did to you, you perceive it like it was intentional when it was a trigger from the past or reaction from the past, an anger from the past, being brought into the present because it has never been healed. So forgiveness unravels things for you, not for them. You don't forget. And this is what I tell my mom. I don't want to be around my sisters because when I am, it's not that I haven't forgiven, but I don't forget.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
And I think
I have total, I'm fine around them and everything, but I'm also very cautious because I don't forget what they're capable of.
And that's where I was going to say, once we get to that point of forgiveness, not for them, but for us, it allows me to be okay with the boundaries, excuse me, that I need to enact in my life in order to stay healthy. And I don't have to feel guilty about those boundaries because it's what's healthy for me, because I understand why I'm making the decision I'm making. I don't need their validation to be okay. And I don't need to sit and be the whipping boy anymore or whipping girl for XYZ.
Okay, and let's talk about boundaries for a minute because I think it's really important. You have somewhere where you live, where whoever is hearing this. Okay, so I have a house. I have doors and windows on that house, and I lock those doors and windows because that is my boundaries. Do I want every Tom, Dick, and Harry to come in here and just start living and leaving their shit everywhere and eating my food?
Right.
No. So I have boundaries. Do most countries have borders? Yes, except the United States, apparently. But anyway, so the boundaries that you set that you're like, I don't know, should I set boundaries or not? Yes, that is respect to yourself. That's an honor of yourself, an honor of your source, and an honor of the other person. When we show our boundaries to somebody, we say, hey, like, yo, like this is my boundary. This is my house. You're entering my space.
Mhm.
So letting and being able to communicate, hey, I don't like it when you yell like that or at that high pitch. So let's just breathe. Let's just take some time. Let's park for a while. Communicating your boundaries, communicating, effectively communicating. So and
Right.
all of that goes back to forgiveness, though. Once we start to forgive, we can also tolerate so much more. Like
Well,
somebody's
because
having a meltdown.
right, because we're not tolerating it anymore. I think that's the key word. We don't have to tolerate it because it just rolls off us. There's nothing to tolerate because it's not real.
Yeah. It's just like flows through. It's like, you're having a moment. Let me
Yeah.
observe that for you. And
Right. I don't
it might
have
piss them off.
yes. And then I get to leave though. I don't have to sit and accept that behavior. I don't have to put up with it. I get to decide what's good for me. And it's probably going to piss people off. I mean, know that people are not going to be happy with it. Your people, your circle right now. But I believe it's because it's going to make you, and it's taking you to the next level.
Yeah, and in all of that, and forgiveness, because forgiveness is a hard piece. Okay, so in my family, um, there's been a lot that had happened, and so we all got together, and I'm like holier than thou, but I just went through a lot. The one thing my family has never been, never, ever given me any grace, love, or support. Never. My
Hmm.
mom has, but nothing. It was like judgment, 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 shame, shame, putting me down. Okay. And so your body holds that cell. Your cells in your body are water. They hold that memory. They hold that shame. So when you're going, this is why what happens with family triggers or with certain people, you're like, they just trigger me. They always do this. So when you're forgiving, you're like, but they did it again. So what happened is it was years of buildup, and we all got together for my son's graduation, and I had to send out a thing and okay it with the hierarchy of the family, two different family things, even though it was my son's event. And when they have their events, nobody has to do this, but for whatever reason, I have to get the approval of the hierarchy. So my sons and another group in the family are not comfortable with a certain group. Okay. And this group's wealthy and has a nicer place than mine. I spent $5,000 fixing up my place. I had just been laid off, and I spent that money to make sure that my walls were clean, my borders were clean. I mean, my curtains and everything. I rocked the entire foundation. And so we were supposed to have an event. Everything was set, everything was in motion, and this happens all the time. And I went into a store to get a card, and I came out, so 10 minutes, and one of the hierarchy women is like, "Well, I changed all the plans, so now we're going to do this, and we're going to go over to this other person's house." And I said, No, no. Like this has been set in motion for months. No, this is a no." And she said, "It's done. It's done." That's exactly how she did it. "It's done. I've texted everyone."
Wow.
Boy, did that boil. And I'm
Yeah.
just telling the story because we all have these moments that we're not proud of. Okay. It boiled and it boiled. And when we got home, somebody, my mom or somebody said something, and all those years that were in my cells, because I have been learning to let go of shit and let go of shit and let go of shit. It came up and it came out, and it came out with a fury. It was ugly. It
I
was
bet it was.
ugly. And afterwards, like now that we none of us talk, so um, it felt so good. And now I'm like, you know what? Now I can really say I have forgiven them. And if they do anything, now I know if they do anything, I'm just going to go, huh, that's so interesting that you still think that I care.
Yeah.
That's so interesting that you think I'm going to have a trigger now.
Right.
Because now I have not just forgiven. That's, I think, maybe true forgiveness, but you have, if you're holding it in your cells, you haven't forgiven. And I hadn't forgiven as much as I had said, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. I'm working on it, I'm working on it. I had never had a release. And until you
Yeah.
can release it out of you, whatever means that hopefully you don't have to do what I did. It was ugly. Whew! Like it was really uh I said whatever was built up, it came out. And it was just such a release.
Hmm.
And I went
And
through
I
the
think,
blame and the shame on them. And then I was like, you know what? That wasn't nice of me. The way that it happened, it feels good. It felt really good um,
mhm.
to release it. But just so when people are thinking, oh, I forgive. No, if you haven't, you have to find a way to release it. So if you can find a better way than what I did, I highly recommend it.
Well, and here's another example. I think the better way is that the more, what I have found is that the more spiritually fit I get, the easier it is to react in a and release in a healthier way because I've gotten more empathy, more compassion, understanding myself and why I react to the certain things that I've reacted to, and understanding that the God of my understanding is bigger and better and more powerful than whatever the perceived difficulty is. Here's my example. So my brother that I grew up with is um, hasn't had the healing that I have had and the opportunities. He has been given the opportunities, he has not accepted them. My mom had some health issues and was in the hospital around Christmas time or a little before Christmas. Everything turned out. And we get to handle things and deal with things in the way that works for us. And I had called and connected with my mom and talked to her about some things that were going on with me, and she was understanding. And we'd been in contact. And my brother calls me. He says, he used some pretty colorful language to tell me how worthless I was. And he did say, "You are worthless. You are nothing but worthless. I cannot believe how worthless you are." And so, of course, I tried to talk to him to tell him, "You don't get to talk to me like that." So he just kept going. So I had to hang up on him. And I was like, wow, nobody has talked to me like that in like 30 years. 30 years. Somebody has not said that. Like, I've not been called worthless since I was a kid. And of course, I'm working on feeling worthy, right? And so then my brother calls me back immediately, and I just look at it and go, I wonder what he's going to say. So I answered the phone, and he goes, "Did you just hang up on me? How dare you? Who do you think you are?"
No.
And I said, "Nobody gets to talk to me the way that you're talking to me. And when you're calm and you would like to discuss this in an adult, kind manner, I'm more than happy to have this conversation with you. Goodbye." And I hung up, and I said it just like that. Of course, he tried calling again. I didn't answer it because I made my peace. I made my boundary because I value myself enough that I do not have to accept that kind of behavior from him. However, I used to accept that kind of shit from my family and from other people in my life. And so he, of course, left a message again telling me how worthless I was. And what I understood after that, I had a flood of empathy and compassion for him because what he's saying to me is a reflection of him and how he really feels about himself, not about me, but how he feels.
That
And he has not taken the opportunities to heal like I've healed. And I'm not going to sit in a higher tower than him and judge him for that. It's not for me to judge because you know what? He is suffering enough. He is suffering enough with the pain that he's living with because he thinks he's not worth, he thinks he doesn't have any worth.
100%. And that's what I was thinking. And so, because remember, hurt people hurt people. And when you were talking, I was like, the anger that came out, the part that I hadn't forgiven was actually as within, without, is because I was projecting onto them. They've been projecting onto me judgment and shame in my perception, right? It's all about our perception. And
Right.
maybe they felt like being, what I perceive being a complete and total bitch. Maybe maybe they perceived it as that's how they were supporting me. I perceived it as I needed love, support, and acceptance. And I really needed some compassion. I needed them to be there as a friend, as a uh help me through it. And they weren't. But it was also because the way that they gave that love and support in my perception was like, well, that's not the support I want. So when you give someone a gift and you're like, I don't like that gift. So maybe it was, I mean, this is a huge breakthrough right now. Is like, so I perceived their reaction. So he felt unworthy. So
Yes.
they were feeling unworthy. They both, and I don't know who's going to see this, but they both have been in marriages that they weren't necessarily happy with. And here I am with kids having the courage, the audacity, and the tenacity to remove myself and my children, my sons from that situation to better myself or whichever situation to remove myself from an abusive. I mean, I had shit tons of money and they were like, why would you not stay? Like,
Mhm.
why would you not stay? You're
Mhm.
completely financially in like abundance. Like, um, so it was my perception of them. And so it is like, so when you were saying that about your brother, or when your brother was saying that about you, I was like, oh my God. So he's so hurt that he's so projecting. I'm not worthy. What he's really saying is, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy, Christy. I'm not worthy, but he's projecting it onto you. And when we can heal ourselves and forgive, truly, it's that 8 that we
Yes.
I don't think we have
Yes.
that. We might have that recorded on a short one. I don't know if you recorded it or me, but anyway, um, it's when you can really let that completely go through love. Someone's coming at you, anger or shame or hate or whatever, and then you got to take that like you did. You were taking it and you were taking it and you were taking it. He's saying you're unworthy, you're unworthy, you're unworthy, and it's coming down on that eight. It's coming down that roller coaster, right? And it's like hitting hard, and you're like, fuck, that hurts. Like that fucking hurts. And
Right.
is it true?
Right.
Am I
Right.
worthy? Am I not worthy? And
Mhm.
you're processing that and you're feeling it. And
Mhm.
then, as hard as it is you go up, like you go up the mountain, right? And
Right.
you start to go up and you start to feel like, okay, I can see this differently. I can perceive this differently. I can see like how this is going to help me evolve, transform, and help others. And so
Mhm.
now you can move it up to the top of the mountain, but we're going the opposite direction, not the same direction. Everybody thinks you're going the same direction. You're going the opposite. You're going to come back down. You're gonna find some love, compassion, and understanding, acceptance, and then you're gonna shoot that back down.
Right.
Phew. And then it softens it. It has to. And when they're ready, they will receive the gift. And thank you, because you just gave me a gift. So now I perceive them differently.
You're welcome. So many things went through my mind as you were talking. Um, One being that when I do my inner work, whatever that is, spiritual work, learning about me and whatever, that kind of stuff makes me realize that I don't have to accept unacceptable behavior from people because I am worth it, which I know I've already said, but it bears repeating because when he said that, because the normal becomes abnormal, abnormal becomes normal in any situation. And um, and until you remove yourself from a situation, you don't know that it's your normal then is abnormal. It's not normal for everybody else. So when I lived in that household growing up, I thought the way I was treated was normal. And so it took a lot of years for me to realize like, oh, not everybody lives this way. It's treated this way.
Yeah,
And so
because that's all
the
you
thing that
know.
right, right, it is all I know, but that's not an excuse. And so when he said that to me, it was like it was like cold water in my face. Like, what? Like, so because I've removed myself from that because I wanted whatever it is that you desire, you have to find and look for that and start moving towards that. Because if I could, and my sister stayed in that situation, like she's trying, but she had called me and she was like paralyzed with anxiety and fear, like she needed permission to leave my mom at the hospital and go home. She's like, I've got my kids and da 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 da, and everybody's telling me I need to stay at my mom and da 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 da. And I feel, and I'm like, everybody is grown adults here. You get to leave. I said, our mother is full. She has her mindset. She's capable of making her own decisions. You leave and take care of you and your family. And like, so it was just interesting. Um, Here's the other thing. So that's just an observation. We
That's
get to be
huge.
loved. Yes, we get to be loved in the way that we need to be loved. And we don't have to feel unworthy because that person or thing is not loving us the way we need to be loved and to need to be supported. You were saying that about your family. Like you needed a different way. You said, I want to feel loved and supported. And they weren't doing that because they weren't doing it in a way that resonated in what Kathleen needed. Just as my family, that's love. Like when I'm called dumb, stupid, or retarded, you should know better. I know those are harsh words in today's society, but that is not the way that I want to be loved. Like I need something different. And it's okay. It's okay for me to draw new boundaries because I've healed. And what worked for the Christy 2, 3 years ago is not 20 years ago, is not the same that's working for this Christy. So if we don't evolve though, and we stay kind of asleep, that's what we will continue to repeat over and over and over and over again. And that will just be my life. And it starts with healing so that I can see. This is what I like to say. I try to see the Christ within other people. And that could be the divinity, that could be the soul. I think in Buddhism or some of the other religions, it's like the soul within me reaches out to the soul within you and to see the true person, not the crap. And the only way I can do that So when I say crap, it's the person who's being yelling, screaming, or calling me names. That's not their true self. That's their sleeping self. That's their hurt self. And so when
It
I
is
heal me,
so their hurt self.
yeah. And so when I heal me, I can see the real you, and I can react in a way that has empathy and compassion. That's where I know that I'm healed. That's a good sign that I'm healed and I've forgiven, that I'm not reacting to their unrealness.
No, and that said, I mean, I've gone through different stages where I felt like I had healed, and I had. This is not like, okay, I'm healed and I don't ever have to go and experience this again. No, you're going to be tested. And I talk about that in my book too. You will be tested time and time again. But the intensity of it is like, you're going to move through that figure eight a lot quicker. You're going to be like, oh, I feel that. That's uncomfortable. Let me transcend that really quick and send it back. I don't hold on to that.
Right,
It's like running that marathon. That first freaking
right. The
mile that you
change.
run is
Yes,
hard the first
yes.
time, but then it's like no brainer. I'm going to go run 10. Not that
Right.
I'm a runner. But the
Yeah.
one thing that I wanted to go back to is that you said something about permission. Oh, for your sister to leave the hospital. One of the things that I have in my coaching, and I will send it to you if you want, is permission slip.
Oh, yeah. That's smart, girl.
I
Heck yeah.
give, and I give it to people, and I'm like, this is just like, you're going to give yourself permission to feel worthy, to feel loved, to feel accepted, whatever it is. And you can keep adding to it. You can change it. You can modify it. It's yours. But you're giving yourself permission because a lot of times we seek from without to validate us because we've been trained by society, the villain, to like, I need a boss's approval. I need this person's approval. I need my brother's or sister's approval. I need approval from someone outside of me when our source is approving of us. Our source knows, okay, like you really, it's like a child having a temper tantrum. You really perceived that incorrectly. And then you reacted because of that perception. But I still love you. And
Mhm.
so when we can find that in ourselves, that's when we've connected to source, and that's what we're disconnected with. But when we can give ourselves permission, like I
Yes.
gave myself permission to have that release. It was ugly. I
Yeah.
had to
And
do
that's
it
the thing. You know
myself.
what? It's because it's all the years of pent up. And when you don't have to,
Okay, but it's tough.
when you can, this is what I've learned. Because one time when I was teaching, I had a teacher who crossed my boundaries day in and day out, and she'd come into my classroom. I didn't have a classroom, I had an office because I was working in a treatment center. So I had an office and then where we taught. Anyway, she'd come in and block the door. And I was like held hostage by her. And she'd tell me like all kinds of shit about her life. And I'm like, girl, I don't care. Like, I don't want to know this about your family. Like, but I didn't feel like I could stop her from talking and tell her, like, I've got work to do. Like, go do your thing. I don't want to know. And then one day I finally just blew up at her. I just blew up at her. And I have a spiritual mentor. And and I was telling her, and she's like, well, Christy, you know, when these are things that needed to be said, but perhaps in the future you can learn to say them as they come up and you don't have to hold it all in and then blow up. Oh,
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
but that's our reaction when we're put into a corner. And that was my reaction when
right,
when I felt like, how dare you change everything? And now like my kids didn't, so it was for my kids. The whole family was in, and my kids didn't get to spend time with everyone because
right. And
they
I've been
wouldn't
there
go
too.
over to that house. And then there was
Right,
another set of the family that wouldn't go over there. And
right.
it's just because like there's just some things, and I'm going to honor my son who's it was for. Uh,
Well,
and
and the thing is that once we have expectations and we aren't healed, we don't realize that we are powerful enough to make different decisions.
yeah, and so
Like
it,
we aren't a victim to that, to their whatever.
and that's just like you have that release, and then you can be like, wow, I could have handled that differently, a lot differently, but I need to have that. So it's giving yourself grace. But then when you start doing this, like, yes, it would have been nice for you to be able to say, hey, when you're standing in front of the door, I kind of feel like you're blocking me. And so there's this energy block, and you know, and
But
setting
I
the
couldn't
boundaries
do
is
that.
sharing that.
Right. And I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the
Right.
confidence. I didn't think that I could do that. And I'm just thinking now, like, why? But some of it is childhood trauma stuff that obviously, like it, and this is what I've learned. And it's just a little tip for anybody who might still be listening to us, but um, that if oh my God, it's gone. It's gone. I guess I'm not supposed to share it.
Well, you were saying like being blocked, and then we were talking about
Yeah.
saying it differently.
Because so I could have said or held my boundary, but I didn't think. So my past, it was never safe to say no or speak up. And so therefore, if I would have spoke up, somehow in my head, I had associated it to, is this going to be a threat to my job? Am I going to lose my job if I speak up? That's false belief. That's fear. What is it? False belief appearing real or something, false evidence appearing real.
False evidence
And
appearing real.
so yeah, so that's what I was afraid of. And then I let this person control my mind and my energy. And so here was I didn't know that then. I've understood it now, years later. But this was the assignment I got from my spiritual teacher because my mind was thinking about this person and I couldn't, like, oh my God, all these things she was doing, blah, 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 blah. And so I was like taking her home with me. And so this was my assignment. I got about, and I'm in a rural area. So there was this little dinky town about 5 miles from the town I was in on my way home. And if I was still thinking about this other teacher, when I got to that stop sign, I was to open my door and throw it out, throw the thoughts of her out my door, and I release you so you're not in my head anymore. And I shut the door so I wouldn't bring that person into the rest of my day and evening and ruin my evening at home with my family. I
I
only had to do it a handful of times.
that I love that. I love that. So whoever's listening, if that helps you to open up the door or open up a window or throw something in a trash can, even write down the situation, burn it. Um,
Yes.
so I'm gonna tell one story real quick. I met this, we were in this Neville group, and there was this delightful, energetic woman next to me, Whitney, and her husband was there. So she said this so beautifully, and I'm not going to say it as beautifully as she did. She goes, for the longest time, I thought like everybody had my script. Like, you're supposed to act like this, and you're supposed to do this, and you're supposed to know that you're supposed to do that. Although I haven't given you the script, I know
Yes.
that I have the script, and I know your script because I wrote your script, and you're supposed
Yes.
to know your script. But then she goes, my husband helped me realize, honey, I don't have that script. Can you give it to me? And
Mm-hmm.
she's like I had this whole script inside my
Yes.
head that you're supposed to, this is how I need you to love me. And it's called
Yes.
communication. What if our school
Okay.
started teaching us how to truly communicate? What if families started communicating? Because I'll tell you what, you go into that divorce court, keep my mouth shut.
You will.
It's not trigger. It's not trigger. And it's complete and total destruction of the family. And so is the school systems. So we're going to reverse engineer that.
All right, we're going to move
Anyway,
on before we get
yeah.
totally triggered.
Yes,
So
let's.
this was
We
supposed
only
to be
have a paragraph in one sentence.
um, so it says that I'm going to just repeat, and we're not going to talk about this. I'm just going to repeat the last two sentences and then we're going to move on. That triggered all this conversation. Relationships in particular must be properly perceived and all dark cornerstones of unforgiveness removed. Otherwise, the old thought system still has a basis for return. So we have to we have to get to forgiveness. Otherwise, yeah, anyway, I said we weren't going to explain that. As the teacher of God advances in his training, he learns one lesson with increasing thoroughness. He does not make his own decisions. Ooh, he asks his teacher for his answer. And it is this he follows as his guide for action.
And we
This
followed
becomes
our teachers. They send us teachers. So the person that
correct.
told you to throw it out. We have lots of teachers that it's communicated in many forms.
Yes. This becomes easier and easier as the teacher of God learns to give up his own judgment.
Ooh, let go of that judgment.
Oh, but who am I without that judgment? I feel like then what do I become? I lose all my power. It
Oh,
was on my,
so that's identity. So we have to change the identity. We have to reclaim or rebuild or reestablish
right.
a new identity as we do this. And that's really important because, like, even in a divorce or in the situations with my sisters, I still identified that they had control to do that. When I could have said, this is the consequences. If you're going to do that, then, this family's not going to come and that family's not going to come, which is the entire reason that you were here is for this family, not that family.
Yes.
And that's fine. Move on. But I was judging it totally.
Yes. I, I, and that was the difference with my, I didn't have to judge him. I didn't have to condemn him. I could just truly,
Oh,
truly see a hurting person.
it's such freeing.
It is so fucking free. And that's the difference. That's the difference is that we get this freedom. The the and it's I think it's scary because I think in like there's so many opportunities to be offended. You know what I mean? Like, oh, did you hear what he called me? And to get all the sympathy from other people. Like what's
Validation.
validation?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, of course you are the way you are. And so many people told me for so long, Christy, if I had a family like yours, I'd do what you did too. Like you had every right. You had every right. You didn't understand. But really, how is that serving me? That isn't making me live my best life.
But we've been trained to, like, oh, just go along with whatever they're saying, whether you agree with it or not.
Right. Because I don't know who the fuck I am. You know what I
Because we
mean?
want to be enablers.
Right. Or yeah, or I want to be validated. I mean, I just am like, who am I to make my own decisions? Who am I? Or
And
to
this
believe
really helps us to see differently.
it absolutely does. So
And
anyway,
I'll tell you what, that judgment, that freeing though, we can all do that like that.
yes. Yes. So the giving up of judgment, the obvious prerequisite for hearing God's voice, is usually a fairly slow process, not because it is difficult, but because it is apt to be perceived as personally insulting. So I first read this, it was like, what?
Because
The
I
world,
was insulted that they did that. You were insulted. And so I'm going to hold on to that. It's serving me in some fashion. It's serving me to
how dare you
feel
say that I
horrible.
should get, yes, that I should give up this. Oh, and then giving it up gives me my power. And giving it up gives me my power.
And don't we want that quicker?
Yes, we do. So the
I think
sooner
that,
I get to it, the sooner, the more powerful I am, the quicker and closer I am to true happiness.
yes.
Oh,
Okay. Just
the
one
world.
real quick, like adorableness. Thank you.
Oh, look at that face. Oh.
You're so sweet. Okay, go ahead.
So the world's training is directed toward achieving a goal in direct opposition to that of our curriculum. Yes, it sure is. The world trains for reliance on one's judgment as the criterion for maturity and strength. Our curriculum trains for the relinquishment of judgment as a necessary condition of salvation.
Yeah, we live on judgment. Oh, we got a court, right? To be judged by another that is equal to us, except that when they're in their title, they are our footstool. That includes judges and cops and presidents and CEOs and all of them. Because when you're playing a title role, you are not above, you are below. We perceive someone as above us because we give our power and relinquish our power over to them, which is why the entire system is built on maritime law and why we have been trained to think that we are owned by another. It's a slave minds mentality. And that's what is so freeing about what I teach and like what you teach. It's just two different ways, looking at it from a legal perspective and looking at it from an emotional perspective, because it's the blending of both the logical and the spiritual.
Absolutely. And when we can get there, which is what I help women with, um, you get this sense of peace and freedom to actually know, you know that you're worthy of the life that you've had in your heart. Like it, you get to live that life. It's giving yourself permission to heal so that you can get that life.
Mm, I love that. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do the logical.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do the spiritual, obviously, but it is all spiritual. It's just the blending of both. I think that's a good place for us to stop this one. And then the next one, I'm really excited if you want to peek ahead.
Yeah.
It's how is judgment relinquished?
Ooh,
That
that's
would,
interesting.
and then how is peace possible in the world?
I
Is
am excited to read this.
yeah.
All
So
right.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording there and then
Okay.
we'll stay on and